Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Spider-Verse Retrospectives, and today we're going to be continuing our discussion on the Automatic storyline as we take a look at the Superior Spider-Man Volume 2, Number 11. So, last time on the Superior Spider-Man. So Otto Octavius, aka the Superior Spider-Man, was kind of facing a little bit of heat, as somehow someone was able to leak to the press that Doc Ock and the Superior Spider-Man were one and the same. Yeah, even adding further fuel to the fire by sending a remote email to Michael Modell, Otto's boss at Horizon University, claiming that Otto's civilian identity of Elliot Tulliver was also actually Otto Octavius. While Otto did his best to do damage control and even and even check in on other people and how they thought about him, even actually having a nice heartfelt conversation with a kid that he had saved, which did affirm that both did genuinely still like each other. Otto began investigating what to do. Otto began trying to investigate who was trying to drag his reputation through the mud, with Michael Modell even offering aid because, well, he already knew that Elliot Tulliver was Otto Octavius and the Superior Spider-Man, so he already knows he's on the up and up. Through their research, they're able to discover the one who leaked this information and the one who sent the email was actually Spider-Man, who was acting on the orders of Spider-Norman, who was basically dragging Otto's reputation through the mud as a form of revenge for Otto standing him up in Spider-Geddon. However, the Spider-Man further told Otto that Spider-Norman was actually in his home universe, and thus if Otto wanted to get him, he needed to travel there. As such, with the assistance of Anna Maria and Michael Modell, plus with the modification of a dimensional viewer in the sub-basement, they were able to potentially open a portal to Spider-Norman's universe, but upon activating it, they wound up activating a booby trap that Spider-Norman set for them in Otto's robotic assistant, the Living Brain, causing the entirety of Horizon University to blow up. While Otto, Anna, and Modell managed to survive all the explosions, Spider-Norman came in to essentially just rub his victory in Otto's face, showcasing that he'd actually been in the Marvel Universe the entire time, having managed to travel there with the strand of the Web of Life and Destiny he stole during Spider-Geddon, yes, he would get revenge on Otto, but before he did, he'd make him suffer as much as possible by destroying everything and everyone that Otto ever loved. And so as such, after knocking Otto down, he managed to fly away on a glider, and thus the comic ended with Otto just kind of laying unconscious in the debris, unable to go after him. As such, today's issue actually picks up with the aftermath of that, as Otto, now managed to recover, is helping rescue services and so forth just get as many people into hospitals as possible. Ultimately, Michael Modell, while not dead, is unconscious, and so he is being hauled away, while Anna Maria is just a little banged up. She's fine. However, what Otto's truly concerned with are the affairs of Emma, because something that I forgot to mention, Spider-Norman had one more target in mind when he blew up Horizon University. As you see, he timed the explosion specifically for when Emma would be in the building. And so Otto went back to the rubble in search of Emma, and he found her, well, very much unconscious and clearly sustaining some heavy injuries. Thankfully, Otto was able to get emergency services to her in time, and they hauled her away, with Otto telling them to just give her whatever they want, money, just do whatever they need to help her. Money will be no object, with Anna Maria promising to stay by Emma's side. In the meantime, though, Otto has other business to attend to, because if Spider-Norman is making good on his threat to attack everyone that Otto cares about, then that means James is in danger. As such, Otto starts web-slinging away, and he immediately calls Night Shift, at least the members that are still loyal to him, to go to James's residence and protect him as much as they can. And unfortunately, that doesn't go well, as when Night Shift arrives, they end up clashing with the likes of Spider-Norman and Spider-Man, who begin essentially taking out each of the members one by one. Dancing Macabre is overrun by spiders. Skane gets her ass kicked by Spider-Norman, and when the zombie guy, I don't remember his name. I'm sorry. I'm trying to see if I can remember his name here. I don't remember it. I'm sorry. I keep going back to this. What's his name? Son of a bitch. Digger, yeah, Digger. While Digger tries his best to actually go like full zombie on Norman, well, Norman is able to incapacitate him by flying his glider right through his neck and cutting his head off. Don't worry, he's okay. But ultimately, through the efforts of these two twisted Spider-Man, the night shift is taken down, and so this allows Norman to go in for the kill, so to speak, as he pursues James and his aunt and uncle, who are just making a run for it. However, before Norman can get the chance to grab James, that's when Otto swings in and just knocks Spider-Norman off of his glider, resulting in the pair of Spideys once more duking it out, with the battle sadly still not going in Otto's favor, as he's still sustaining injuries from having Horizon University caved in on him. Plus, Norman starts throwing some of Otto's past failures in his face. Specifically, how the ending of the original Superior Spider-Man run ended with Otto willingly giving Peter's body back, because this universe's Norman Osborn took over New York, and Otto could not do a thing to stop it. So, in other words, Spider-Norman is throwing in Otto's face that no matter what Otto does, he cannot beat Norman Osborn. Now, which Norman emphasizes by managing to flip behind Otto, shoot a couple web lines at him, and then just deliver a kick right into the base of Otto's back, causing him to fall to the ground and, well, sustains and essentially injure him even more. As such, this allows Norman to finally swing in and grab James with the intent of killing him right there. But however, before he can get the chance, Otto does manage to speak up, and basically through battered breath, he finally just pleads with Norman to not kill this kid. Just tells him, look, just let him live. I'll do anything you want, anything. Just don't hurt him. As such, Spider-Norman decides to cut Otto a deal. He won't hurt James. In fact, he'll take care of him. But on one caveat. Within the next 2 hours, Otto has to kill 3 people. 3 innocent civilians. No criminals. No one that's terminally ill. They have to be tried and true citizens. People who have long, flourishing lives ahead of them. People who did nothing wrong to anyone, or whose crimes are so minor that nobody would even care about them, not even the police. They actually have to be upstanding members of society, and Otto has to kill them in full view of public and the public and cameras. And only when he does that will Norman let James live. And Otto, well, not having any options right now, reluctantly accepts. Norman takes James away and tells him and tells Otto that he better find some targets quickly, and thus as Otto starts falling into unconsciousness, James pleads for his help, and sadly Otto is powerless to do anything. However, the comic then cuts ahead to later as Otto wakes up in a hospital with his mask still on, because people are still respect the Spider guy, and with Anna Maria standing over his bed. Basically, it turns out that emergency services were able to get to Otto, James's aunt and uncle, and Night Shift before things got too hectic, and they were able to rush them all to the hospital. James's aunt and uncle are ultimately fine, but they are shook, having each been given a sedative so they can calm down. Night Shift themselves are a bit battered and bruised, but none of them are dead, so that's considered a win. But what Otto ultimately cares about is what happened to Emma, and so while Anna Maria kind of advises him not to do it, Otto ends up suiting up and goes to Emma's bedside, and yeah, she's in a coma. And and Anna Maria lets Otto know that because of the injury she sustained, it'll be a while before she wakes up. So, yeah, essentially this day's been kind of a bummer. Everything has been going wrong for Otto. His identity has been outed to the public. His superhero reputation has been tarnished. The people he loves and cares about are being targeted by a psychotic madman from a parallel universe who has a beef with Otto because he told him off. And now each of them are suffering in some way, shape, or form. And Otto is powerless to do a thing to stop it. Even Otto admits that Norman is just relentless. No matter what tricks Otto tries, Norman has some kind of answer to them. He's unrelenting. He's unstoppable. He just keeps coming more and more and more. And Otto, he can't do anything. He can't stop it. And he even remarks that maybe once upon a time he could have stopped him, which Anna Maria points out that once upon a time was when he was a supervillain, Doc Ock. But right now he's a hero, and she tries assuring him that they'll find a way to fix this. And Otto says that he already knows a way. At first, Anna Maria thinks he's talking about the deal he made with Spider-Norman, as James's aunt and uncle were there when he made the deals, and they did relate to tell everybody about it. But Otto shoots that down immediately. He had no intention of killing anybody, and he knows that even if he did kill 3 innocent people to save James, odds are Norman would still kill James anyway, just to spite Otto. As such, Otto believes that he needs a better solution if he wants to take down Spider-Norman. And sadly, to do that, well, he's got to make a hard choice. As such, Otto manages to activate the arms in the spider legs in his suit, and he begins sending out a signal to another realm, so to speak. Which realm? Well, here's the thing. Remember how I mentioned in earlier Superior Spider-Man vlogs how at one point earlier in this run, Otto temporarily wound up briefly teaming up with Doctor Strange? Well, while both doctors were working with one another, Otto wound up essentially scanning some of the residual unique energies that Strange meddled with. Mystical ones, allowing him to access mystical realms. And in one of those realms, Otto believes there is someone that can provide him aid. Someone that, well, let's just say quite a few Spider-Man fans are familiar with. And not in a good way. And no sooner does Otto send the signal out, does he get an answer, as in a puff of red smoke, appearing in the room with him and Anna Maria, is Mephisto. Yep. The Superior Spider-Man is going to be doing his own version of a one more day deal. So, what's the rub? Ultimately, Mephisto is fully aware of Otto's problems with Spider-Norman. Because after all, which makes sense, he's Mephisto. He's essentially the devil of the Marvel Universe. Odds are he would know about these sorts of things. And basically, at first he thinks that Otto wants to ask him to do something about Spider-Norman, and Mephisto says he can't really do anything directly to him, because after all, Spider-Norman's from a parallel universe, and the thing is, that universe probably has its own version of Mephisto, and the big red cheese here definitely thinks that if he did anything to Spider-Norman, it would kind of tick off his counterpart there, since it's essentially the rough equivalent of playing with another kid's toys. Just don't do it. But that's not what Otto wants. Otto does not want Mephisto to do anything to Norman. Rather, Otto wants to make a deal that directly affects him. After all, as Otto stated, as he is now, he is in no state to fight Spider-Norman. He is limited by his morals and the conundrums that come with them. And as a result, he's not as ruthless as he was when he was Dr. Octopus. Which is why he wants to make a deal to go back. He wants Mephisto to turn him back into Dr. Octopus. Not completely, not forever, just at least for one day. Just enough time to save James and stop Spider-Norman, and then he can go back to being the Superior Spider-Man. Fix it, and thus go back to having the life he has. However, Mephisto doesn't want to do that. He just admits it's an interesting deal, but he declines. Of course, Otto wonders why he's not taking the deal, because, even saying that he can give him any payment he wants. If he wants his soul, he can have it, but Mephisto says Mephisto disregards it, because after all, he may already have Otto's soul, and if he does it makes Otto think he might want it. No. Mephisto instead decides to make another deal, one a bit more twisted. He will give Otto his body back, but not for a day. For keeps. And to sweeten the pot, so to speak, he will put Otto back in his body, completely free of all ailments, physical and mental. And of course, he will also strip away every little bit of Peter Parker that is currently in Otto's mind. Of course, when Anna Maria hears that deal, she immediately pleads with Otto not to take this up. Because here's the thing, what Mephisto is essentially offering Otto here is a character reset. He will essentially undo all of Otto's character development just for the sake of turning him back into Doc Ock, which that's obviously what Mephisto is trying to do. That's why he's letting Otto make this deal in the first place, because essentially doing this would transform Otto from the hero he is now back to the monster that he used to be. But ultimately, that means that all the good that Otto has done will essentially have been for nothing. Of course, Mephisto tries to just kind of disregard all that and say, no, you'll still have all your memories of this life. All your acts of heroics will still be there. You'll still remember the woman you loved, the life you lived. You just won't remember anything that's associated with Peter Parker or any aspects of him that are still a part of you. Because after all, do you really need it? Of course, again, Anna Maria keeps trying to talk Otto down from this, saying that the person he was before was not a good person. Though Mephisto counters with the fact that Otto has continually claimed that back when he was Doc Ock, he always claimed that he was suffering from mental illness, and that if Mephisto restored him back to his original body, then he would remove all physical and mental ailments, which means if he was suffering from mental illness, that would be gone too. Emphasis on if he was. So basically, from this point on, the next few pages are literally just Mephisto and Anna Maria essentially acting as the angel and the devil on Otto's shoulders as he has to make a decision. With Anna Maria pleading for Otto to think of another way, to reconsider this, to think of something else, to do something else, while Mephisto just keeps whispering in his ear, trying to make the deal sound as enticing as possible. And to kind of put the pressure on, he starts making a time limit, saying, come on, you gotta decide quickly. I have other places to be, and other people want to make deals as well. And Anna Maria just keeps pleading with him, saying, come on, no, Otto, come on, we can find another way. Please, if all that shit that you put me through, if it meant anything, then please don't do this. We can find another way. We can work together. Just don't turn back into that man. And so basically, as Mephisto extends his hand, he says, I'll ask you one more time. Do we have a deal? We see Otto open his eyes as he makes his decision. At which point, the comic cuts to another part of San Francisco, as we see the Brothers Grimm from Nightshade essentially in a hotel room as they're packing their bags full of money. It turns out, it was Norman that paid them off. And so basically they're thinking that they should get out while the getting's good, because while Otto and Norman are duking it out, they'll be too distracted to focus on the Brothers Grimm, and the Brothers Grimm already know that the instant Otto catches up to them, they're fucked. So they think they should get out while the getting's good. Unfortunately, they should have run out faster, because they immediately start hearing something pounding on the ceiling, and one of the brothers immediately realizes that sound is metal. So they immediately realize that Otto's on their asses. Although when the ceiling caves in and we see Otto come in, it's not the superior Spider-Man that's breaking through. Ultimately, people, Otto gave in. He took the deal. And the one who is ready to beef out the superior Spider-Man's vengeance is Dr. Octopus, back in his original body, who, immediately upon arriving, grabs the Brothers Grimm in his tentacles, threatens to break every single bone in their bodies, unless they tell him exactly where Norman Osborn is. And that is where the comic ends. So, the Mephisto deal. So, something you'll kind of realize when it comes to the Marvel Universe and certain Spider-Man continuities is that there are two particular story trends that the writers tend to like to reuse for certain Spider-Men, either because they're iconic or because they like reworking them in ways that fits other Spideys better than it did in certain in others. Or it works better. They can try and rework it to be better in one situation versus their original incarnation. The first one is clones. Every Spider-Man in the main universe has dealt with clones in Once Upon a Time. Peter Parker has had a few clone sagas under his sleeve. Miles Morales even had a clone saga, and hell, Otto. The only reason Otto had his Elliot Tolliver body was through cloning shenanigans. So you can throw that in there. But then, of course, the second one, the one storyline that lives on in infamy, is One More Day, because that's the thing. The whole Mephisto making a deal with Spider-Man thing has been repeated. The first, obviously, was in One More Day, where Aunt May got shot by one of the Kingpin's assassins, and thus Spider-Man, and thus for whatever reason, because the hospital couldn't heal this dying old lady from a fucking bullet wound, and ultimately Peter made a deal with Mephisto so that his fucking marriage was removed from canon. And then Miles even had one in the pages of, I think, the New Warriors, which I think it was the New Warriors. Yeah, it was. I think it was. Either way, in that, which it was done a lot better there, as in that comic, the New Warriors had fought the supervillains Zax, who wound up curb stomping them and kill most of their members, and Mephisto to essentially just screw with Miles, pretty much said he turned back time before the battle so that they know exactly what to do to not die, and he'll do. And basically, he would have no strings attached. He would just do it now. He would just do it. He would just do it. Miles would not pay a single price, but the offer is limited, so Miles had to decide fast. In that moment, that was actually a much better use of it, because ultimately the torment that Mephisto got was from Miles knowing he resorted to having to make a deal with the devil. So, but here we see, but of course. Now we see Otto have his One More Day moment, as he is pushed to the brink, and ultimately, the only person he can turn to is the devil, which, let's talk about my thoughts on that. So, when I first saw this trade, I did not think I wanted to read it. And I mean that sincerely. Like, the cover looked really damn cool. Like, look, we got Spider-Norman grappling with the superior Spider-Man, which I thought immediately was cool, because after all, this signified that they were going to be wrapping up that loose plot thread from Spider-Geddon regarding Spider-Norman, and we finally get to see exactly what was Norman going to do what was Norman going to do with the strand of the Web of Life and Destiny that he stole. But then when I picked up the book and then browsed through the pages, I happened to come across the whole Mephisto deal. And I was like, no, you really can't be doing this. And then they did. And part of me was so fucking pissed at this. Because here's the thing. As I've mentioned, one of the reasons why the Superior Spider-Man is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, incarnations of the Web Slinger is because he is a story of redemption. He is again, Otto Octavius was one of Spider-Man's greatest foes. One of the people who, even when he wasn't actively going out and smashing things with his robotic tentacles, was someone that could easily outthink and overpower Peter Parker. And thus not only did Peter have to best him physically to beat him, but he had to outthink him. And on many occasions, Otto would get some minor victories over Spidey. And with one of his biggest victories being him stealing Peter's body, which led to the Superior Spider-Man arc in the first place. But the thing is, the whole idea behind the Superior Spider-Man story was Otto genuinely putting his best foot forward and trying to become a good person. Actually try and put his dark past behind him and work to try and essentially atone for all the evil deeds that he's performed as in his years as a supervillain. And honestly, while I didn't read the first 6 issues of this run, from what we see in this trade, we see Otto actually undergoing character growth as he continues to try and live up to the ideal of being a hero. We see him make compromises. We see him learn to accept the help of others. We see him come to the realization that he can't save everyone and the resulting guilt that comes from said realization. We see him make connections with people and work to essentially be better, if not for himself, but for them. We see him make human connections with people that he has saved, like in the case of James, who he continued to help out even after he helped him in the aftermath of a previous crisis. And then you get to Spider-Norman and him having to make this deal. I knew that if this is the route they were going to go, then the whole reason they were doing it was because, well, status quo is God. In the comics, in the big two comic worlds, there is a set status quo that needs to be adhered to. Sometimes the status quo is jostled. Sometimes it's changed up a bit. Sometimes something major occurs with the character that results in a completely radical shift in who they are, what they do, and even potentially who's under the mask. But ultimately, those changes are temporary at best, and sooner or later, the character will go back to being exactly the super recognizable hero that all the public all knows and adores, and can easily be grasped by your average everyday non-comic book reader that these companies are trying to get to pick up their books. And then you have the Superior Spider-Man. And here's the thing. Otto's arc was one of those things that I did not want to get undone. As I read through a lot of the Superior Spider-Man books, I always thought to myself, this is just temporary. This is not something that will last. At some point in some way, some higher up at Marvel is going to say, make Doc Ock a villain again, and they'll do it. They'll turn him back into a bad guy. And all of these good things that he did in these books, all the struggles he did to make the right call when he would have wanted to go nuts and do all the evil shit he did as Dr. Octopus, would not matter. He would just go back to being the same psychotic nutball that we know. But, oddly enough, the ending of the Superior Spider-Man kind of seemed to avoid that. As in those books, Otto willingly sacrificed his life to bring Peter back. Yes, it restored one status quo, but it showed the zenith of Otto's character development by having him make the ultimate sacrifice because he knew this guy was better suited for the job than he was, and the world needed him more than it needed Otto. And what made it better was that we learned that Otto's mind was still alive. Mind you, when he did get a new body, he did go back to being a villain, which I did not like. But after that, he once more tried to go back down the path of heroism. He tried turning the Superior Octopus persona into a heroic one, trying to continue to tell everyone, oh, I was a brainwashed or something, which is a selfish thing. But like during his time as the Superior Spider-Man, he took steps to try and do the right thing. And when he made mistakes, he acknowledged them and worked to undo them. His involvement in the Spider-Geddon storyline was essentially him trying to atone for a mistake that he made, because it was because of the cloning tech that he had created that allowed the inheritors to escape from Earth 3145, and so he took on personal responsibility to essentially undo what he did and stop the inheritors once and for all, even going so far through Spider-Geddon to work with Spideys that clash with his ideals and even come to compromises with them. So because ultimately he wanted to make the right call and realized that they did need help, that he kind of needed the help, and it would be better if they were all united. And the best way to do that was to essentially kind of come to a solution that he may not have been entirely okay with, but it would at least get everyone on the same page. And then you have these issues. Again, I didn't read the first 6 issues because I'm still reading through the other run of the Superior Spider-Man, and I'd like to finish that before I get to this one proper. But from what we see in the but from what I've seen in this one, we see Otto continually trying to better himself. In the War of the Realms tie-ins, he wanted to be on the front lines, but he was told, "Look, we need you over here, and there are people that do need your help over there. So please, can you do it?" And while Otto was reluctant, after Gwenpool was able to get through to him, he realized this isn't a bad thing. There are, even if I'm just helping just one person on the side, just any random person, it matters. It matters. No matter how big or how small the heroism, it matters. And that was good. And then in the aftermath, you see Otto dealing with the guilt of not being able to save everyone, and it works. You see him make more human connections with Emma as she comforts him, and it's adorable. You see him continually continuing to check in on James and make sure he's okay, and it's wonderful. You see him go back to James and his family when his secret gets outed, and at first they're angry with him, but ultimately James realizes that Otto is a good guy and he still wants to be friends with him. It's so adorable and sweet. And we see that all that Otto has done throughout the series has warmed people up to him. Even people that he works with, people that he's friends with, even when they realize that he's Otto Octavius, they trust him because of all the good he did, all the lives he saved. And then you get to Mephisto, pretty much just saying, you're going to go back to being Doc Ock. And all the experiences that were associated with Peter Parker, the things that helped Otto reach this emotional point where he can realize, okay, maybe helping people is a good thing. It's going to go. You're going to go right back to the same arrogant dickwad that you were before. And I at first didn't like it. I did not like that that's where the story was going. I did not like that we were getting an in-universe character reset of Otto Octavius. But here's the thing. The circumstances surrounding this deal are actually good. Here's the thing, because like with the ending of the original Superior Spider-Man run, Otto is at his wit's end. He is dealing with a foe that, whether he wants to admit it or not, is superior to him. And Norman has taken steps to weaken Otto. He did it as, here's the thing. Norman stated that he had been visiting the main Marvel Universe for some time, and in that time, he spied on Otto, learned all of his weaknesses, and the only reason that Otto was even aware... The only reason that Otto was even aware of what Spider-Norman was doing was because of his identity being outed on the news. And even then, he only got confirmation that Norman was involved when Spider-Man outed him. Otherwise, Otto was unprepared. When Spider-Man told him, "Oh, Norman's in his home dimension," Otto believed it, and it cost him his friends, with Norman actually knowing that that's the route that Otto would have taken because he ensured that the explosion would occur with all the people that Otto cared about in Horizon University being in the building at the time, just so that they could get hurt and potentially be killed, with Norman being right there to throw it all in Otto's face and make him suffer. And then you get to James being captured. Otto did everything he could to save him, but he was already weak from having Horizon University brought down on him. He was already... Night Shift was taken down by the combined efforts of Norman and Spider-Man, which I guess makes sense, because after all, both of them are alternate Spider-Men to a degree and do have all of his powers and abilities. Plus, Spiders-Man is a giant mass of radioactive spiders, while Spider-Norman is kind of stealing a bit from his main universe counterpart by flying around on a goblin glider. So, you can they not only have Spider-Man's tricks, but they also got a few extras that Night Shift probably isn't prepared for. And yet, even when Otto himself enters the fray, he is still too weak. He cannot beat Norman. No, and ultimately, Norman has all the cards now. He has James in his hold, and he could kill him at a moment's notice, putting Otto at a disadvantage. Otto is out of options. He can't think of a solution because he's too overcome with anger, with grief, with emotion, and because he's trying everything he can to play it safe, he's losing it. He's losing it, and he has no idea what to do. And ultimately, you can understand why he'd be so desperate to seek the help of the devil himself, because every option he's tried has failed. And even if he wanted to get help, he knows that if the instant someone else entered the fray, like Peter or the Avengers or some other superhero, that the instant they entered in, Norman would just kill James. And so he thinks, what if I resorted to using the tactics I did as Dr. Octopus? And I don't just need to start thinking like I used to, but I need to be the way I used to. And so that's when he wanted to make the deal. And of course, Mephisto essentially altered the deal further by saying, I'll just put you right back to the way you were. Back in the prime of your health. Physical, mental illness is gone, and all traces of Peter Parker left. It's horrifying and terrifying, but you understand why Otto's doing it. Because he's failing, and he doesn't know what to do. You can feel it throughout the comic. His desperation, his anger, his loathing, his sadness, seeing the people he cares about being hurt and tortured by Spider-Norman, with Otto being unable to do a thing. The panel in the comic where Otto is standing over Emma's body in the hospital while she lies there unconscious. It's sad. It's really sad, and it makes you a little afraid for what's going to happen next, because Otto is clueless. He can't think of a solution to outthink Norman on this. So when presented with the deal, you can tell that even with the caveat that he won't be returning back to the Elliot Tolliver personality or the Elliot Tolliver persona, he still thinks that he might do it. And it leads to a great moral conundrum, because on one side you have Anna Maria trying to tell him that he shouldn't do this, that they'll find another way, that they'll do the right thing, he can continue to be a hero and not go back to being Doc Ock. Well, on the other side, you have Mephisto whispering into Otto's ear, telling him, oh, are you too weak to do it? No trust. Don't worry, you'll still have your memories. We'll get rid of all the unnecessary bits. And remember, time is fleeting. I just want you to be yourself. Anna Maria here clearly doesn't want that. It's just, you can really feel the tug of war going on in Otto's mind as he's stuck between these two opposite forces, both trying to compel him to make the opposite choice. And ultimately for Otto to give in and decide, no, I have to be Doc Ock again. It's tragic. And it feels like a genuine tragedy, because you know that with that decision, everything that Otto has built is now torn down. He has lost it all. But he's willing to make that sacrifice if it means saving everybody he loves. And quite frankly, that's more than exemplified in the final 2 pages of the comic, as we see Dr. Octopus breaking into the apartment of the brothers Grimm and threatening them into telling him where Spider-Norman is. That part alone is tragic, but in a way also lets you know that shit's getting more real. That Otto is done playing games. He is not playing by the rules anymore. This is now a full fight between two megalomaniacal supervillains. And, well, And now, and unlike before, Otto is not going to pull his punches. He is not going to try and find the civil way out anymore. Norman has pissed him off. He has threatened the people that Otto cares about. And he is going to do everything in his power to make him pay. It's tragic. It hurts. But the way it's done is honestly kind of beautiful. It works in my opinion because the fact that Otto is willing to make this sacrifice, to let himself be steeped in the mud again, to become this monster again, just for the sake of saving those he cares about, it does show that he did come to some character development. And ultimately, but at the same time, it's still steeped in tragedy because you know that him turning back into Doc Ock will also undo that character development. And he's fully aware that he's made this decision. He knows why he's back to being Doc Ock again. He's been through all that, and he's been through all that, so of course he knows. But by that same token, you know, you're also aware that Otto does still care about these people, and he's willing to go through hell and back just to keep them safe, even if it means essentially destroying everything he built with them. It's tragic, and it makes me angry because, from a meta sense, I know why this was done. But how they did it, I think, is beautiful storytelling, as it emphasizes the tragedy, the desperate nature that comes from making this decision, from having to give up everything that you built for, every single heroic act that you have done, giving up every single person that you care about, just to make sure they continue living and are happy, even if ultimately you won't be there to witness it. It's a great way of essentially, it's both aggravating and yet amazing storytelling. And quite frankly, I think it works. In this context, the deal with the devil worked. At least story-wise. But that's ultimately just the thoughts on that. But ultimately, that's just one aspect of the comic. The rest of the comic, well, I think I already summarized it perfectly well. The comic further emphasizes just how badly Otto is in deep throughout the story, and so all of it really is just there to help kind of showcase what Otto's mindset is when he finally makes the deal, which, as I said, it's good stuff. It's really well done really built up to well, and quite frankly, I think the payoff is both tragic and beautiful in its own sense. So, yeah, I'm just restating what I said. Otherwise, yeah, I think issue 11 is good. It's really good. But it's also not done. There's still one more issue we have to look at before we can close the page on the Superior Spider-Man and the Spider-Geddon era as a whole. So, well, next time we meet, I think it's time we wrap up the story proper and see what happens when Spider-Norman goes toe-to-toe with Dr. Octopus, as we'll wrap things up with issue 12 of the second run of the Superior Spider-Man. So then, hope you have a good Saturday, and I'll see you on Tuesday. Take care.